That'll now be more difficult.
The man who recovered £40 million worth of gold from a sunken British warship has appeared before Bow Street magistrates. Keith Jessup faces 3 charges under the Official Secrets Act, along with John Jackson, an official of the Salvage Association. Gary Lloyd was in court.
Keith Jessup is the diver whose consortium was successful nearly 2 years ago in recovering over £40 million worth of gold bullion from the wartime wreck of HMS Edinburgh. The ship had been torpedoed in the Barents Sea by a German submarine. The gold was payment for armaments supplied to the Russians. Jessup is charged together with John Jackson, an official of the Salvage Association, who were appointed by the government to choose which company should be allowed to salvage the gold. The charges under the Official Secrets Act allege that the 2 men passed Foreign Office documents to unauthorised persons, the effect of which was to give Jessup's consortium an unfair commercial advantage in winning the salvage contract. Jackson is also charged with conspiracy to defraud, and Jessup is accused of procuring Jackson to commit offences contrary to the Official Secrets Act. The prosecution will be asking that the 2 men be committed for trial at the Old Bailey. The case could last a week, and reporting restrictions were not lifted.
Financier Sir James Goldsmith has won £85,000 damages and costs in a libel action against the satirical magazine Private Eye. Sir James took the High Court action over an article linking him with Italian banker Roberto Calvi. His award is the single biggest libel sum ever paid by Private Eye.
The Office of Fair Trading has declared war on loan sharks who prey on the unemployed and single-parent families, those least able to afford their excessive interest rates. The office's Director General, Sir Gordon Borry, has called on the courage and cooperation of the public to help enforce legislation to stop illegal moneylenders. Traders lending more than £30 must have a licence, and it's a criminal offence to trade without one. Anyone owing money to an unlicensed lender can't be compelled to repay it because the loan is unenforceable. But the problem is becoming widespread, particularly in the north of England, where there's high unemployment. There have been many cases in Newcastle upon Tyne, where Nick Owen is now speaking to Mike Crossley, who's Deputy Director of the Trading Standards Office.
Mr Crossley, can we be clear, first of all, a lot of the illegal money lending activities that are talked about are carried on by people who actually have money lending licences already, isn't that right?
Yes, that's right. The possession of a licence doesn't always guarantee high trading conduct. Many money lenders who do have a licence are in fact being investigated for breaches of the Consumer Credit Act.
And what sort of things are they being investigated for? What have they been doing?
Well, for making illegal loans or debtor-creditor agreements, as they're called in the Act, for taking illegal securities such as a family allowance book or a war pension book.
How does that work? What do you mean by that?
Well, often when the moneylender approaches someone, he realises that they're not wealthy people, single parents perhaps, or women, and he'll say to them, yes, I'll give you a loan, either 40, 50 or £100 or more, but I must take your child benefit allowance book or your war pension book or your widow's pension book as security for the loan. And this is the way they operate.
Of course, completely illegal, presumably.
Yes, it is. It's an offence to take possession of a DHSS book, be it a family allowance book or widow's pension book, anything like this. It's illegal to take possession of it, but it's not illegal for the borrower to hand the book over.
Oh, I see. Now, what about the sort of interest rates that these people charge?
Well, I've done a calculation here, and in fact the highest rate of interest we have recorded is 59,600%.
Let's just get that clear for a moment. 59,000%?
Yes, that's correct. 59,600% on a loan which was made to a woman in Newcastle. And the lowest rate we've ever come across was about 400%. So you see, these people, they're not philanthropists, they are doing it for a very high rate of interest indeed.
Exactly, you say very, very high, compares with what, and if one
well,
wanted to get a bank
loan, you would be paying about 10 or 11%, a little more perhaps. If you go to a finance company, you'd be paying perhaps between 23 and 30%. If you go to a pawnbroker, perhaps 60 or 70%. So you can see that the rates of interest that these illegal moneylenders charge are grossly extortionate by anyone's reckoning.
Now, what about some suggestions of violence even being used of people who don't want to pay up?
We have evidence that bricks have been thrown through people's windows, that women and even worse, children have been threatened. that people have been humiliated and embarrassed in front of their neighbours, that they've been subject to harassment, all highly illegal practices, and where we obtain evidence, then of course we take action.
Now, what would you suggest to people who find themselves victims of these sort of loan sharks?
Well, if you're in the hands of an illegal moneylender, pluck up your courage and get in touch with the nearest Trading Standards Department. The help and advice we give you will be completely confidential, and it's almost certain that there will be something we can do to help you alleviate your problem.
Finally, the law seems to be rather weak, doesn't it, if people who have licences are able to do these sort of things?
Well, licences are granted by the Office of Fair Trading. We keep the OFT very fully briefed about the activities that we discover, and it's up to the OFT to take action then to either suspend or, in some cases, to cancel the licence of an offending moneylender, or to refuse him a licence if he applies for one.
Mr Crossley, thank you very much indeed for joining
Thank
us
you.
now. Back to London.
Indeed, more details of the activities of loan sharks in Newcastle upon Tyne will be featured in Watchdog on Nationwide at 6:25 on BBC1 tonight. A call to restructure the finances of athletics in Britain has been made by the Sports Council, who administer the £33,000 government grant into athletics each year. With the details, David Cass.
The Sports Minister, Neil McFarlane, called for this report last December. And as the Sports Council Chairman, Dick Jeeps, revealed today, it confirms exactly what was suspected. There are too many governing bodies spending the government grant aid to athletics. It spotlights the anomaly whereby the 3As earns a lot of money and pays tax on profits, whereby the British Athletics Board, which selects our Olympics and international teams, is always struggling. The report calls for a unified approach, but doesn't go so far as calling for only one new governing body. But what more could be done if there were only one organisation accepting and therefore spending government money?
Well, I think there would be a better approach. It would make sure that everybody got an equal opportunity within the sport. The only way that there is a united approach at the moment is through the coaching scheme, which is across the United Kingdom.
How is the financing of athletics likely to change as a result of this report?
That's a matter for the governing bodies of athletics, of which there are 19. They really, if they want to form one governing body, have got to decide that amongst themselves. It wouldn't necessarily be cheaper if there were only one governing body to run, shall we say, because all the constituent parts would still run their international events and cross-country championships. But on the other hand, the monies that are currently perhaps going to taxation out of one governing body could be available for the bottom end of helping development of athletics.
Prince Andrew has opened a new section of the Fleet Air Arm Museum at Yeovilton in Somerset, showing what the service did during the Falklands conflict. Graham Purchase was there.
It was obviously a visit which would bring memories of the Falklands fighting flooding back for the Prince. Parked outside the entrance to the Fleet Air Arm Museum was his very own Sea King helicopter, which he flew from the carrier Invincible. Also there were colleagues from the naval station at Culdrose, where Prince Andrew was based. Inside the museum, there were displays of captured Argentine aircraft which had been collected and shipped back to this country since the end of the conflict last year. Several of them are virtually intact, like the Pucara and Air Mackie. The Prince was also shown more grim reminders of the conflict. Aircraft wreckage from both sides in the fighting are hung around the walls. Humphrey, the Wessex helicopter, was there too. Piloted by Lieutenant Ian Stanley, it sank the Argentine ship, the Santa Fe. Among the other memorabilia, Prince Andrew met a Harrier pilot next to a painting of the aircraft he flew in the Falklands. Lieutenant Nigel Ward used his plane to shoot down an Argentine Hercules aircraft. Prince Andrew then went on to see a collection of war paintings, including a display by the official Falklands war artist Linda Kitson. This afternoon, after the official opening, he'll watch a special flying display by the RAF's Red Arrows, as well as aircraft from the Falklands conflict.
In the Far East, South Korean state television has come up with an unexpected formula for rating success. What was intended to be a one-off programme, a sort of This Is Your Life to reunite families divided by the Korean War, has taken over the entire network. Jim Biddulph has the story.
KBS TV in the Korean capital, Seoul, has been besieged ever since this program started. What they wanted to do was reunite some of the families divided by the Korean War of the 1950s. They didn't bargain for the impact. About 10 million family members were separated by the Korean War and its aftermath, which produced communist North Korea and pro-American South Korea. Ever since the Reunite Families program was started last month in South Korea, the TV station has been besieged. The program now runs for 10 hours a day, and the station has had to allocate 1,000 staff to keep it on the air and control the crowds trying to find the families they lost. There have already been many reunions, but KBS TV has a long way to go. It's promised to give a showing to all the applicants who want to appear on their show. So far, there have been more than 26,000 families registering their claim to airtime, and more are turning up when they see that the formula can work. South Korea today looks like a country that needs another television channel.
On the stock market, share prices were unsettled by rumours that the government are planning to sell 100 million BP shares. At 1 o'clock, the FT index was down 6.3 at 677.6. On the foreign exchanges, continuing worries about the direction of interest rates, both at home and in America, meant the pound was down half a cent on the dollar at $1.53.5.
2 policemen have set a new record for parascending under 10 London bridges. The constables, both from Cambridge, hope to raise thousands of pounds for charity. Peter Main followed their trip down the Thames.
Constables Gil Boyd and Bob Runnell spend a lot of their working lives underwater as members of the Cambridgeshire Police Diving Squad. But today their aim was to soar over the River Thames to raise money for a London children's hospital and clinch a new world record. No one had ever attempted to parascend under 10 of the capital's bridges before, and their attempt wasn't without its problems. But after a few false starts, both men were airborne and clearing the first bridges on their 3-mile route safely. Just in case, rescue men kept up with them on motorised surfboards, one of them manned by Olympic swimmer Duncan Goodhue. Gil Boyd is a parachute expert, having trained in the parachute regiment. But Bob Runnels is new to the sport and only started to learn how to parascend 6 weeks ago. Using the ropes on their chutes to control their height under the arches of the bridges, both men made it to Tower Bridge, which nearly proved to be one too far for Gil Boyd. But he recovered to get through and join Bob Runnels, the new world record secure. Congratulations, a new world record.
Thank you very much. Yes, it's a first.
Any hairy moments?
For me, no, but the worst part was hanging around whilst they cleared the river ahead of us. And I started to feel bad in the air then.
You went in once though, didn't you?
Yes. Well,
just for Lambeth Bridge?
Yeah. That was my fault.
No, I ditched completely. We started again. Because the wind was wrong, it came under the bridge, hit the parachute wrong, and we did nothing else but ditch the safest way.
You didn't have very much clearance under some of those bridges, did you?
In actual fact, my parachute bobbed along the 3 Blackfriars bridges. It actually touched and went along, and the lads did shout up very, very close. So, you know, great at the end of the day.
Well, for those of you who may just have dropped in on this news programme, here are the main stories of the day. There's been strong lobbying at Westminster just 2 days before the hanging debate. MPs seem so evenly divided, it could be a single-figure majority either way. President Reagan's peace attempts in Central America have suffered a major setback, and the man who recovered £40 million worth of gold from a sunken British warship has appeared before Bow Street magistrates charged with offences under the Official Secrets Act.
And the time now, 1:25.
So let's now go over to Jim Bacon for the weather prospects.
Thank you. Well, certainly the prospect's still looking good with a lot of hot, sunny weather. Quite humid weather, though, very muggy and very hazy as well. In most of the country, though, it's going to be a dry afternoon and very hot indeed. The high pressure is still close enough to ensure the dry weather, but it's also still providing a lot of dull, misty weather along that east coast, which may well spread back inland during tonight. The other area of interest is down to the southwest, where the low is still there, and that's also been providing some cloudier weather for southwestern parts of the country, and 1 or 2 thunderstorms are likely down there during the rest of today and probably through the night. There'll always be the greatest threat of thundery weather in that southwestern corner, although 1 or 2 might start to develop further east during the next couple of days or so. Well, let's have a look at today's chart now, and on it you'll see some quite large numbers really for those temperatures. 29 centigrade in a good many places, and already in the south the temperature's probably 4 or 5 degrees higher than it was at the same time yesterday. So certainly in for quite a hot day, but once again a very hazy day indeed. And although it's dry in many places at the moment, it might not remain so. The cloud along that eastern coast, though, that's going to thin, and in many places there's the chance of a little bit of sunshine, although the fog will only be a short way offshore, and I think it'll return later on this afternoon or during this evening. And then down towards the southwest, there's already quite a few patches of cloud there across Cornwall and very close to West Wales, and I think you're likely to, well, certainly have the greatest chance of some thunderstorms, although even in between those there will be some dry weather as well. Now, looking on to tonight, very little to change that distribution of the thundery weather, confining it, I think, in the main to western parts of the country. The thunderstorms, all the while, gradually working their way northwards, those that develop, and as they do go north, they'll be slowly dying away. So, eventually, a lot of places will become dry again overnight, except perhaps for the southwest. But in eastern areas, still that misty weather, which is liable to spread inland from the coast. Well, that's all from me. A very good afternoon to you.
This is BBC1 for the Eastern Counties. Good afternoon, now the regional news and weather. The strike by Felixstowe seamen, which halted all Townsend-Torreston ferry sailings from the port over the weekend, looks set to spread. Union officials will meet in London tomorrow to consider extending their action to the company's Dover base. The men walked out on Saturday over a pay dispute. Young people are being warned not to swim in reservoirs and similar stretches of water during the present hot spell. Police and Anglian water officials issued the advice after an 18-year-old Northamptonshire boy drowned in Cransley Reservoir near Kettering. There have been 3 other drownings in the region over the weekend. An 18-year-old boy died after swimming in the River Ouse at St Neots. A 14-year-old boy drowned in a flooded chalk pit at Lakenheath, and an 8-year-old girl died in the sea off Hunstanton. Production at one of Ely's biggest factories was brought to a standstill today because of a strike. 72 workers at the Jardin cardboard box factory walked out in a dispute over union recognition. They say they won't return to work until management discusses holidays and contracts of employment. The troubled multi-million-pound electric train service between Bedford and St Pancras finally became fully operational today, but not without some problems. A signals failure just outside the new King's Cross station caused delays of up to 25 minutes for a short time this morning. A schoolboy is seriously ill in hospital after being badly burned at his home in Eton-Soken near St Neots. 11-year-old Warren Griffiths was pouring petrol on a bonfire in his back garden last night when the fire suddenly flared up. Farmers in the Cambridgeshire Fens have been warned to take immediate precautions to protect their crops against one of the worst outbreaks of potato blight for several years. Ministry of Agriculture experts are blaming humid weather conditions for outbreaks on several farms. Part-time firemen employed at the fire station at Spalding have threatened to come out on strike unless their quarterly salary payments are speeded up. They say there will be industrial action unless the problem is solved this week. Princess Anne is in Suffolk today. She opened a new sixth form centre at Felixstowe Girls' College this morning and met people involved in the Save the Children Fund, of which she's president. This afternoon, the Princess will unveil a commemorative plaque at a new sports centre at the Haverhill Meat Products Factory. Young people will be given the chance of working in a glamorous career under a new youth training scheme launched today. 600 places are being offered at football clubs throughout the country, including the 6 league clubs in the eastern region. Youngsters will be trained in playing skills and administration. Well, that's the news this lunchtime. On now to the weather forecast. Coastal areas will be cool and dull with fog patches and temperatures around 18 degrees centigrade, which is 64 Fahrenheit. Inland, the afternoon will be hot and sunny with temperatures rising to 28